I still remember the exact moment my 25th birthday stopped being a celebration and became the day I finally understood where I stood in my family. Before I tell you what happened, I want to ask you something. Which country are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy emotional stories about family, betrayal, and justice, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Now back to my story. My name is Emily and I'm 34 years old now. 9 years have passed since that birthday, but some memories never fade. No matter how much time goes by, you never forget the day. The people who were supposed to love you most made you feel completely invisible. Growing up, my younger sister Madison was always the center of attention. If she wanted something, she got it. If she made a mistake, someone else was blamed. If she cried, my parents acted like the world was ending. I was the responsible one. The quiet one. The daughter who never caused problems. At least that's what everyone said. For years, I convinced myself it didn't bother me. I told myself that being overlooked was just part of life. But deep down, I hoped that one day, my parents would see me the way they saw her. When my 25th birthday approached, I thought that day had finally arrived. For the first time in years, my parents seemed excited about celebrating me. My mom helped reserve a private room at my favorite restaurant. My dad invited relatives from out of town. Even some friends I hadn't seen in years planned to attend. I was genuinely happy, not because of the gifts, not because of the party, but because I thought my family wanted to celebrate me. The morning of my birthday started perfectly. My phone was flooded with messages. Friends called to wish me a happy birthday. I spent hours getting ready, smiling every time I looked in the mirror. For once, I felt important. For once, I felt loved. Then, just 3 hours before the dinner, my mother called. The moment I answered, I knew something was wrong. "Emily," she said breathlessly, "there's been an emergency." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" "It's Madison." The room suddenly felt cold. I grabbed my keys, ready to leave immediately. But what my mother said next changed everything. "We have to cancel your birthday dinner." I stood there in complete silence. Cancel my birthday? For Madison? At that moment, I had no idea that the so-called emergency wasn't real, and that discovering the truth would eventually destroy the image I had of my family forever. For a few seconds after my mom told me my birthday dinner was canceled, I couldn't even speak. I stood in my apartment, holding my phone so tightly my hand hurt. "What happened to Madison?" I finally asked. There was a pause. Then my mother said, "She's at the hospital." My heart immediately started racing. "Is she okay?" "We don't know yet," Mom replied. "Just get here." The call ended before I could ask anything else. Within minutes, I was in my car driving across town. Every terrible possibility ran through my head. A car accident, a serious illness, something life-threatening. By the time I arrived at the hospital, I was shaking. I rushed through the entrance and found my parents sitting in the waiting area. Neither of them looked panicked. Neither of them looked like parents whose daughter was in danger. That should have been my first clue. "Where's Madison?" I asked. My mother pointed toward a hallway. A few minutes later, Madison walked out. Walked. Not rolled out in a wheelchair. Not carried out on a stretcher. Walked. She looked completely fine. I stared at her in confusion. "What's wrong with you?" Madison avoided my eyes. Before she could answer, my father jumped in. "She's been under a lot of stress." I blinked. "Stress?" My parents exchanged a quick glance. Then my mother explained that Madison had experienced what they called an emotional breakdown after an argument with her boyfriend. That was it. No accident, no injuries, no medical emergency, no life-threatening condition. Just a breakup. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. "You canceled my birthday because Madison had a fight with her boyfriend?" My mother's expression hardened immediately. "Don't be selfish, Emily." Selfish. That word hit me harder than anything else. For 25 years, I had been the daughter who never asked for attention, the daughter who helped everyone, the daughter who always understood. And somehow I was selfish for being disappointed that my birthday had been canceled. I looked at Madison. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. Not once. Not even to apologize. Instead, she sat down beside our mother and leaned her head against her shoulder like she was the victim in all of this. That dinner reservation was canceled. Relatives were turned away. Friends received last-minute messages telling them not to come. Months of planning disappeared in a single afternoon, and nobody seemed to care except me. That night, I went home alone. No birthday cake, no celebration, no family, nothing. I sat in my apartment, eating takeout from a plastic container while scrolling through social media. Everyone else seemed happy. Everyone else seemed loved. Meanwhile, I felt completely forgotten. Around 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was a photo posted by Madison. My stomach twisted when I saw it. She wasn't in a hospital room. She wasn't receiving treatment. She wasn't recovering from some emotional crisis. She was sitting in a luxury hotel bar with her boyfriend, the same boyfriend she supposedly had a devastating breakup with. Both of them were smiling, holding drinks, looking perfectly happy. I stared at the picture in disbelief. Then I checked the timestamp. It had been uploaded less than 30 minutes earlier. I immediately called her. She didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. Then I texted her, "Why are you at a hotel?" No response. The next morning, I drove straight to my parents' house. I walked into the kitchen and placed my phone on the table. My mother looked down at the photo. My father did too. Neither seemed surprised. That terrified me more than anything. "You knew?" I asked. Silence. My voice cracked. "You canceled my birthday because of a fake emergency?" My father sighed heavily. "It wasn't fake." I laughed. Actually laughed, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The picture was taken the same night. My mother folded her arms. "Your sister was upset." I stared at her. Upset? She needed support. I felt anger building inside me like a storm. So my birthday didn't matter? Nobody answered. That silence told me everything. For the first time in my life, I stopped making excuses for them. I stopped telling myself they didn't mean it. I stopped pretending the favoritism wasn't real, because it was real, and everyone in that room knew it. The worst part wasn't losing the birthday party. The worst part was realizing I would always come second. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I sacrificed, no matter how much I loved them, I left my parents' house that day with tears burning in my eyes. But something else had changed too. Something important. For the first time, I wasn't just hurt. I was done. What I didn't know then was that this wasn't the end of the story. Because over the next 9 years, Madison's lies would grow bigger and bigger. And eventually, one of those lies would expose everything. When that happened, my parents would finally learn the cost of choosing her over me. After that day, something inside me changed. I didn't cut my family off completely. At least not right away. For a long time, I still tried to maintain some kind of relationship with them. Part of me kept hoping things would improve. Part of me wanted to believe that maybe my parents would eventually recognize how unfairly they had treated me. But the years that followed only proved that nothing had changed. If anything, it got worse. Madison remained the center of their universe. Every family gathering somehow became about her. Every conversation revolved around her latest crises. Every problem she created became someone else's responsibility. And every time she made a mistake, my parents rushed in to rescue her. Meanwhile, I built my life without them. I focused on my career. I worked long hours. I earned promotions. I bought my own home. I created stability for myself. Ironically, the less I needed my parents, the more they seemed to ignore me. They rarely asked about my accomplishments. When they did call, the conversation always found its way back to Madison. One Christmas dinner. My father spent nearly an hour discussing Madison's latest business idea. Nobody asked about the promotion I had received the week before. Not one person. By the time dessert arrived, I realized nobody at the table even knew I had been promoted. I had never felt so invisible. A few years later, Madison announced she was starting an online wellness company. According to her, it was going to change people's lives. My parents acted as if she had invented electricity. They invested money immediately. Friends and relatives invested too. Everyone praised her vision. Everyone celebrated her ambition. Something about it felt off to me. Madison had never shown interest in health or wellness before. She had never run a business. She had never managed money responsibly. In fact, she constantly jumped from one idea to another. But nobody wanted to hear my concerns. When I gently questioned some details, my mother accused me of being jealous. Jealous. That word again. It was easier for them to believe I was jealous than to consider I might be right. So I stayed quiet. Months passed, then years. The business appeared successful from the outside. Madison posted photos of expensive vacations, luxury hotels, designer handbags, new cars. Every family gathering became another opportunity for her to brag, and my parents soaked up every word. Your sister is amazing. We're so proud of her. She's built something incredible. I heard those phrases so many times I could practically recite them myself. Then, during the 8th year after my canceled birthday, something unexpected happened. One of my clients happened to work in financial compliance. We met regularly for professional reasons. One afternoon, while discussing an unrelated project, Madison's company came up by accident. The moment he heard the company name, his expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough for me to notice. "You know the owner?" he asked. "My sister." He hesitated, then quickly changed the subject. At first, I didn't think much of it, but a strange feeling stayed with me. A few weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I started researching. Nothing illegal, nothing invasive, just public information. What I found immediately raised questions. Financial records didn't match that image Madison was presenting. Certain business filings were missing. Revenue claims seemed inconsistent. Some partnerships she constantly bragged about appeared not to exist at all. The deeper I looked, the stranger things became. Still, I said nothing. Years being told I was jealous. Years being blamed whenever I questioned Madison. I wasn't about to walk into that trap again. So I kept my findings to myself. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I was at work when my phone started vibrating nonstop. Texts, emails, missed calls, social media notifications. First, I thought something terrible had happened. In a way, it had. Madison's company was under investigation. News articles were appearing everywhere. Customers claimed they had paid for services that never existed. Investors alleged financial deception. Former employees were coming forward with accusations. Within hours, the story spread across multiple platforms. I sat at my desk, staring at my screen in disbelief. Not because I was shocked, because I wasn't. Deep down, I had sensed something was wrong for a long time. What shocked me was how massive the situation had become. Millions of dollars were potentially involved. Millions. By that evening, my parents were calling repeatedly. I ignored the first few calls, then finally answered. My mother's voice sounded frantic. "Emily, have you seen the news?" "Yes." "We don't know what's happening." I remained silent. My father got on the line. "Of course she did." Nothing was ever her fault. Someone else was always responsible. Someone else was always the villain. I listened quietly while they repeated Madison's explanations. Hackers, competitors, everyone except Madison herself. The conversation felt strangely familiar, just like the birthday incident, just like every other situation. No evidence mattered. No facts mattered. Only Madison mattered. Then more. Then even more. Each revelation was worse than the last. Financial records had been altered. Investors had been misled. Entire sections of her business were built on lies. The image she spent years creating began collapsing piece by piece. People she had charmed turned against her. Friends stopped returning her calls. The luxury lifestyle vanished almost overnight. For the first time in her life, my parents couldn't protect her. And that's when something happened that I never expected. The truth about my 25th birthday finally surfaced. One evening, I received a phone call from Madison's former best friend, Rachel. We had barely spoken in years. Her voice sounded nervous. "There are things you deserve to know." My stomach tightened. What things? There was a long pause. Then she said words that made my heart stop. That emergency 9 years ago wasn't just fake. I froze. Rachel continued. Madison planned it. My hand started shaking. What do you mean? She was angry because everyone was excited about your birthday. I couldn't breathe. Rachel explained that Madison had complained for weeks before my party. She hated the attention I was receiving. She hated hearing relatives talk about me. She hated that for once she wasn't the center of attention. So, she created the crisis. The breakup story, the hospital visit, the emotional breakdown. All of it. I planned. Deliberate. Intentional. Every single detail. Tears filled my eyes as Rachel continued. She told several of us she was going to make sure your birthday never happened. The room felt completely silent. 9 years. 9 years of wondering whether I had overreacted. 9 years of questioning my memories. 9 years of trying to convince myself it wasn't personal. And now I finally knew the truth. It had always been personal, but the most devastating part wasn't what Madison had done. It was what came next, because Rachel revealed something even worse. Something that would change everything between me and my parents forever. Something they had known from the very beginning. I sat frozen on my couch, gripping my phone so tightly that my fingers hurt. Rachel's last words kept echoing in my head. Your parents knew from the beginning. For a moment, I honestly thought I had misheard her. What are you talking about? I whispered. Rachel sighed heavily. A few days after your birthday, Madison admitted everything to them. I felt sick. My stomach twisted into knots. What exactly did she admit? That there was never a real emergency. She admitted she exaggerated everything because she didn't want your birthday party to happen. The room started spinning. For 9 years, I had believed my parents were manipulated. For 9 years. I thought they had made a terrible decision based on false information. But according to Rachel, that wasn't true. They knew. They knew Madison had lied. They knew she had ruined my birthday intentionally. And they still chose her. I barely slept that night. Every memory came rushing back. Every excuse, every dismissal, every moment they made me feel like I was asking for too much. For the first time, all the pieces fit together. The next morning, I called my parents. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply asked them one question. Did Madison tell you the truth about my birthday? Silence. A long, painful silence. That silence was all the answer I needed. But eventually, my father spoke. Emily, I closed my eyes. Just answer the question. Another pause. Then he said it. Yes. One word. One tiny word. Yet it shattered something inside me forever. I felt tears rolling down my face, not because I was surprised, because hearing it confirmed was worse than anything I had imagined.
You knew?
My mother got on the phone. We didn't want to reopen old wounds. I laughed bitterly. Old wounds? They were talking about my pain as if it were an inconvenience. You let me believe I was selfish for 9 years. Nobody answered. You watched me blame myself. Still silence. You watched me question my own memories. My mother started crying. But for once, her tears didn't affect me. For years, I had carried guilt that never belonged to me, and now I was finally free of it. A week later, I met them in person. Not because I wanted closure, because I deserved the truth. We sat across from each other at a small cafe. Both of them looked older than I remembered. Tired, defeated. The investigation into Madison's business had gotten much worse. More evidence had surfaced. Criminal charges were being discussed. Civil lawsuits were already underway. The daughter they had spent their entire lives protecting was finally facing consequences. My father looked down at the table. We made mistakes. Mistakes. That word almost made me laugh. Canceling a birthday was a mistake. Forcing one child to spend years feeling worthless was a choice. We always thought there would be time to fix things, my mother said quietly. I stared at her. Neither of them spoke. There were 9 years. The silence between us felt enormous. Then my father asked a question I never expected. Can you forgive us? I thought about it carefully. Not for a few seconds, for years. Because the truth was, I had been thinking about forgiveness long before this conversation. Finally, I answered honestly, I don't hate you. Both of them looked relieved. Then I continued. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Their expressions changed, and for the first time, they seemed to understand. I wasn't seeking revenge anymore. Life had already handled that part. Madison's lies had destroyed everything she spent years building. Her reputation was gone. Her business was collapsing. The people she manipulated had turned against her. The truth had caught up with her. As for my parents, their consequence was different. They had spent years investing all their trust in one child while neglecting the other. Now they were living with that reality. A few months later, Madison was formally charged for multiple financial crimes. News outlets covered the story extensively. The glamorous image she had created vanished completely. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who destroyed my birthday, because she couldn't stand sharing attention eventually, became the center of attention for all. The wrong reasons. Meanwhile, my own life continued moving forward. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Real peace. Not because Madison suffered, not because my parents regretted their choices, but because I finally stopped needing their approval. That was the greatest victory of all. I no longer needed them to admit I mattered. I knew I mattered. I no longer needed them to celebrate me. I celebrated myself. I no longer needed them to choose me. One chose myself. A year after our cafe conversation, something happened that felt strangely symbolic. I turned 34. My birthday arrived. Friends filled my house. People who genuinely loved me surrounded me. There was laughter, music, cake, memories, no drama, no fake emergencies, no competition, just happiness. At one point during the evening, I looked around the room and realized something. The family I had spent years chasing was never the family I needed. The people who truly cared about me had been beside me all along. That night, before blowing out the candles, I made a silent wish. Not for revenge, not for justice, not for validation. I wished for freedom, and for the first time in my life, I already had it. 9 years earlier, my parents canceled my 25th birthday for my sister's fake emergency. They thought they were protecting her. Instead, they lost the daughter who had spent her entire life trying to earn their love. And in the end, the truth exposed everyone exactly as they were. Madison lost her lies. My parents lost my trust. And I found myself, if you've made it this far, tell me in the comments. Which country are you watching from? Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional and unforgettable stories.